Welcome to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast, the podcast so unofficial it doesn't have a home. Here's your host from In Heights Sites, Nathan Heights. And from State of the Steelers, Daniel J. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to it's been a while, back to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast. I'm Daniel, alongside with me, as always, Nathan. Nathan, how's it going, my man? How you been?
We've been not too bad. Been kind of busy, staying busy. Starting to get some sunshine out here, which is great. But I've been looking forward to coming back on here with you. It's been since the end of the season, really, since the last we recorded. So it's good to be back on here and talking with you about what's going on with the Steelers and whoever may be coming in the live stream in the chat. So thanks for having me again. How are you doing? I haven't talked to you in not really too much, honestly, since the last time we recorded.
Yeah, it's been a bit. Doing good, man. Just getting better every day, and looking forward to some Steelers news. And boy, do we have quite a bit. Let's start off first with the big drop that happened a couple nights ago. DK Metcalf. $150 million contract, 5 years. What surprised you more, the trade or the what they gave up and or cost?
I think the trade just within itself, honestly, is because when they were looking at last year, Tom, what's up, man? Thanks for coming in. When we're looking at last year and they were in the wide receiver market, we saw how long the Brandon Ayuk stuff played out for, and they had a deal on the table. We know the trade compensation was maybe they were playing a little bit too much hardball. The Niners were. But in my opinion, I think DK Metcalf's a better wide receiver than Brandon Ayuk. That's just my opinion. So the giving up the second round pick, which is the 52nd overall pick, it's not an irrelevant draft pick. I mean, you can get a really solid player with that draft pick, but in return, you're getting a very good wide receiver, which is one the Steelers have been wanting for over a year now. And they gave the big contract, which I believe is a bigger contract than probably what they were going to get Brandon Ayuk, possibly. Could be wrong on that. So I was surprised that they made the trade at the time that they did. I had a feeling that they were going to, well, I think we all kind of knew that they were definitely going to try to get some type of wide receiver. But I think we all maybe thought it was going to be the free agent market, whether that was Darius Slayton, Christian Kirk at the time before he signed he got traded to the Texans, maybe Devontae, maybe Cooper Kupp or something like that. So I wasn't expecting a trade. I know DK Metcalf requested a trade. I'm sure the Steelers during that time, I think a lot of us probably thought maybe the Steelers were inquiring, but I felt like it was going to maybe go toward just more of the free agent market, and they were going to see how it played out. So I was kind of more surprised at the timing and just making a humongous trade like that. But I was stoked when it happened. I was stoked. I was so happy to see something like that happen because we have no answer on George Pickens' future, even before this trade. Is he going to get traded? Is he going to be extended at some point? So they needed a number one wide receiver. They needed one that was going to be locked up here for a while, and they did that. We'll talk about maybe how this might impact George Pickens, but I was stoked about this trade. Kind of shocked by it a little bit, just especially the timing and that they went the trade route instead of the free agent route, but I'm stoked, man.
I am too. I was shocked that it happened. I was not expecting it. I put out on Twitter because I think I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Adam. Maybe it was Scheffner. Maybe it was Rappaport. Don't remember who it was, but one of them reported that DK was going to be put out there on the trade market. And I was like, I retweeted it, quoted it, and I was like, he looked good in black and gold. Never really thought it actually happened.
Yeah.
And then less than 24 hours later, it happens. Yeah. Complete shock. I initially thought, all right, what does this mean for George Pickens? And I think somebody with a blue check mark, which doesn't necessarily mean anything, but a guy with a blue check mark said something to the effect like, expect some news that Pickens is going to be traded soon. It didn't happen. I haven't heard anything through my resources with Steel Curtain Network or anybody else that I affiliate that is or I speak to that's an insider, whether or not they're going to trade him or not. It seems like, in my opinion, no news is good news, and I think they're going to end up, keeping him. I mean, last season that was the plan, right? I mean, they weren't willing to give up George Pickens for Brandon Ayuk. They wanted both of them, and why not? You have this guy under contract. He does well. He proves himself. Franchise tag him next year. Every year the cap keeps going up and up. I'm fairly positive because of the ways and the new ways that the NFL is making money now that they have Netflix games and Prime games and all sorts of stuff, even playoff games in a similar manner. Salary cap is only going to continue to go up. Might as well get these guys signed or taken care of now. But I think the Steelers can control George Pickens' future for the next couple of years at the very least. And if he does what he's supposed to do, not only will that be better and good for the Steelers, but that'll also be good for him. But they wanted a two-headed monster at the wide receiver position going back to last year. So I strongly suspect they're going to continue to keep that unless, Cooper Kupp ends up getting released and then they sign him. And then maybe at that point, I think Pickens his seat might be getting a little bit warmer, so to speak.
That's possible. What if they go with just the three-headed dragon?
That'd be nice. I mean, but that
would be intriguing, but I would be cautiously optimistic too.
Yeah. I wouldn't think they would do that. I mean, you have Austin, you have Roman Wilson still.
Right.
I think they want to utilize some of that younger speed from both of those guys. So I doubt they'd go with a three-headed monster that way. But right now, and I think that the reason they have these guys is, I said this on Steel Curtain Network. I said this with Shannon White yesterday. I was like, the Steelers are becoming what is called a mechanic special. And what a mechanic special is where I was going through Facebook Marketplace looking at a couple of cars, and somebody's like, hey, I got this mechanic special. It was a vehicle with a blown engine. And the reason it's called the mechanic special is because it's going to be really cheap for somebody who knows what they're doing to fix the engine, the issue with it. And the reason why I'm saying that here is that the Steelers have kind of put together a team in place for a quarterback that's willing to come in here on a special price and on a lowered price, on a discount. We saw that.
Double check?
Yes, there you go. We saw that with Justin Fields. I myself don't think that the Steelers treated him as the guy, as the franchise guy, or gave him enough confidence to believe that they treated him or thought of him as being the guy for this upcoming season, which is the reason why he chose the Jets. Some people say it's because of the money. Well, I say you got to get paid for the position that you're going to play, right? And when you look at the pay, like where quarterbacks are getting paid right now, Justin Fields is the lowest paid currently right now, is still currently the lowest paying projected starting quarterback, not on a rookie salary. I mean, they didn't even match the guy before who was, I think that was some guy at 25 million. I can't remember off the top of my head. The Steelers went with 15. It's that's backup money. I mean, Danny Jones is making more than that, and he's projected to compete. He's not going to be given the starting job,
right?
So, 20 million, in my opinion, is not steep. Now, when you look at the market, 25 million before Justin Fields was the lowest. And I would have thought, like, hey, if you're going to have a guy that's going to come in here and you want him to be your guy, aren't you going to at least match the lowest, quarterback's earnings?
Yeah. I hear you. It was, I think most of us expected Fields to be the one that was going to be retained. And I definitely want to get in this conversation of the whole quarterback carousel. Right now, or not right now, but I guess still right now, I am disappointed with the way that they've handled their quarterback situation right now. I would have thought that come yesterday that they would have had a full-on answer with somebody. I don't like the way that they've kind of let this linger around. And I think we knew going into this offseason the options were thin. And a lot of people out there can say, well, I don't want Fields. I don't want Aaron. I don't want Russ. I don't want – well, you got to have somebody. It's not – you're not just going to have somebody fall in your lap right now. So from a reality standpoint of understanding who was on the market, understanding your draft position, understanding the quarterbacks in this draft, it's very easy for people to say, well, the Steelers got to find a franchise quarterback. The Steelers got to figure out their quarterback position. That's very true. They've botched this whole quarterback thing the last 5 years. They failed to invest in a young quarterback in Ben's final years. They had the chance, in my opinion. I don't think it's any excuse to have to tank and get a top pick. The Chiefs traded up 15 spots to get Patrick Mahomes. We didn't know what Patrick Mahomes was going to be like when he got drafted, but they traded up 15 spots. You don't have to have a top 5 pick to get a top quarterback. You can trade up if you want. Be aggressive. Be aggressive about it. There's some years you can go back and look at draft classes and say that could have been a year. That could have been a year. 2020, for example, that could have been a year, but they didn't do that. So they've put themselves in this spot, and I'm pretty tired and just annoyed of playing quarterback roulette, but it is what it is. So at this stage, again, with the reality standpoint, just speaking on Justin Fields and not going on a tangent and just kind of having this discussion, I'm disappointed starting off with Justin Fields that he wasn't back. I myself and a lot, I think, thought he was going to be the one to be retained, just given his youth, given some of the things that he did to start the season. Given that there still is upside there, but in reality, where Justin Fields is at right now, he's still a bottom tier starter. He is. That's the reality. As you're looking at what he's did in Chicago, and he didn't move the needle necessarily when he was starting here. He did some good things for sure. But he wasn't a big needle mover or anything. We're like, okay, wow, like this really, he has to be it. But given his youth, given his mobility in today's NFL, that's what made him attractive. And that's why a lot of people were attracted to him, in that he was already here and he's already worked with Arthur Smith. And he said himself, he didn't want to learn another offense. So, okay. So I am disappointed that that's the route they didn't go. I don't care to see older veteran quarterbacks in this today's version of the NFL. That's just my opinion. But with Justin Fields, yeah, that was, in my opinion, the guy that they should have went with for this season. I've given reason. I've a lot of people I've talked to, reasons why. It ultimately just comes down to the youth, the mobility. There's still some upside left there. If he doesn't work out, you can draft your guy next year in the draft. That's how I viewed it. And that's why I think it would have made that's why it would have made more sense. If he did end up improving and developing and everything, then you can move forward with him. And that's why I think you at least had a couple scenarios, a couple different avenues with Fields. Rather, if you're going to go the veteran route, I don't really think you really have many avenues. I think really you're just kind of going into 2025 really in the same position you were last year. That's just my opinion. So I don't know. How do you feel about, since just on the Justin Fields topic by itself, how do you feel? Was he kind of the one that you hope to see stick around? Were you okay with him moving on? Was your mind elsewhere? What were you feeling?
At the end of the day, I thought whether it would be him or whoever's coming in, it's just going to be a placeholder. Yeah. I mean, they're not, this isn't the future. And I don't think Justin Fields was going to be given that opportunity to be the future here or there at Pittsburgh. George says Fields didn't want to get Rudolph. The way you don't get Rudolph is by getting adequately paid. They paid him as a backup quarterback. And that was it. Somebody that could compete for a job. I don't think, based on what they did during the season, right? He went 4-2. They pulled him out. Yeah. Russ started to struggle. There was some people apparently according to reports that claimed that, they wanted to put him back in and pull Russ out. But Tomlin, vetoed that and said, no, that's not going to happen. So, Aditi reported there was some distrust there, and you have distrust plus a lack of confidence in the paycheck. I mean, can you really trust what they're saying? I mean, this isn't the first time that the the agency. This isn't the first time that the organization hasn't come out and stated how glowingly they wanted a quarterback back, i.e. Mason Rudolph last season, and do something completely different, which is why I've been pounding the table this entire, point leading up to this, where I've been saying, watch what they do, not what they say. Or don't listen to what they say, watch what they do, because in the end, they're often saying a lot of things. And I think that what they're saying could be means to get what they want, right? Why are they going to show their hand? Why are some of these, persons like Jerry Dulac, who is close with the organization, why is he always getting things wrong? Well, the reason is why
I'm blocked.
Well, the reason why is because they're being given wrong information by the right people in efforts to perhaps, get a competitive edge, so that way they can kind of push things into their direction. I think that happened a lot this time. I think that's what the whole, Steelers are going to be offering Sam Darnold the deal. I think that was an effort to push whoever it is that they wanted. Some people say it's Justin Fields. I think that if it was Justin, in the end, I think they made a huge mistake by allowing it to get too far. They should have signed him immediately after the season.
Yeah.
Don't let him have these conversations, or his agent have these conversations with other teams. Yeah. Take care of it right then and there. And the fact that they let it linger, just kind of led me to believe that it wasn't going to end up happening. Now, who's going to replace who? Russ is still an option. I think he's option Z, last option that's available. If nothing else fails, you go back to Russell Wilson. How would you feel about a Russell Wilson return? There's a, connection there with DK Metcalf. When you look at DK and George Pickens, it kind of fits what he wants to do, which is throw the ball to the outside and throw it deep.
Yeah.
What do you think about Russ staying? Do you think the Steelers can be a competitive team with him?
I think they would really just kind of be in the same ballpark they were last year. To be honest, at the end of the day, they'll get some good, they'll get some bad. Russ still has an arm to throw a ball down the field, but he just takes horrendous sacks, and his mobility as he's aged is a lot more limited, which you need in today's NFL. He's somebody that's taking care of his body. He doesn't really get injured as much. So I don't really have that agility worry that I would have with Aaron, for example. But if he comes back, that's really kind of how I ultimately feel about it. Like there can be some dynamic deep plays to our offense, and we saw some of that last year. But when you do want to factor in context, we really only had George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin made some plays here and there, but he's not fully groomed yet into this league. We had a run game that they wanted to run the football, and it wasn't really that established dynamic that the Steelers wanted with Harris and Jalen Warren. We were seeing Cordarrelle Patterson get more snaps at times. That was awful. So it's so easy to blame one thing. It's really an all-around problem, and that's really kind of how it's been over the last handful of years. So if Russ comes back, I think we just kind of still get the similar vibe, even though we have DK Metcalf here. I still get the similar vibe. I still think that it's a feeling of kind of the same area at best, maybe a playoff win, but that's kind of where the mindset's been the last handful of years, is at least at best a playoff win. And it's like, is that how low we've gotten? Is that really how low we've gotten, is trying to hope for one playoff win? Like, that's horrible. I think the Steelers have to make up their mind, man, that they want to continue to go down this path of adding to their team and trying to make this team better to win now. But they got to make up their mind. It's like, dude, you're either going to swing for the stars on a quarterback with what you have, or you have a defense that's starting to age. And not that these guys aren't good anymore or anything, they are, but there is age, and there's going to be some things that you see throughout the season of an aging defense, and you don't have a quarterback. So that's a whole nother conversation in terms of moving guys or unloading guys, which I know people out there want to do too, but that's not their direction they're going. We have to go off of what is their direction. Their direction is to keep what they have intact, add to it, get better, and try to win right now. And unfortunately, there's the quarterback market is just super thin. Teams overpay for quarterbacks all the time that really aren't that great anyway, because it's a desperate quarterback league. It's a quarterback driven league. So when you have the Steelers, all right, they bring Russell Wilson back. What is he, 37 years old now?
Mm-hmm.
So sure, there's an arm left, but I don't really see too much difference offensively than really what we saw last year. We might see some more dynamic plays with Metcalf in there now, but outside of that, I still just think we're just hovering around the same stratosphere, and you don't really have multiple avenues you can go. Rather than with Fields, that's why I mentioned the different avenues of what could possibly happen. And I think with Fields, for example, that would have given you a best of both worlds. You either get something out of Fields or you don't, and then you get a good pick, or you trade up in the draft next year. So with Russ, listen, who's ever at the quarterback, I'll support. I'm a fan of the logo, fan of the team. I don't like how they've let the quarterback situation linger. So if that answers that.
No, I get you, man. I agree. Letting it linger unless their quarterback from the entire get-go was who they end up with, which is Aaron Rodgers. I know that I think it was Gary Dulac who had stated that the Steelers by any means are not going to get Aaron Rodgers. There's not a fitment there. Like I said, he's gotten so many things wrong before. Maybe perhaps that was a diversion, and their entire plan this entire time was to get Aaron Rodgers, which is the reason why they gave maybe Justin Fields or Sam Darnold and all these other guys such a low blow offer. With the thoughts that, hey, these guys aren't going to accept it, and this will put some pressure on Aaron Rodgers, who apparently is asking for 2 years, $90 million.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a lot, but I think it was either Florio or Colin Coward. He had mentioned something to the effect that that's at, when you look at the market, that's at 75% of what the top paid guy is getting paid, and or 75% of the market value. When you look at it that way, it doesn't sound like, all right, that doesn't sound like that much, because I mean, would you rather put Aaron Rodgers or even any of these guys, your starting quarterback, below 50% of what the market is? Probably not.
No.
The Steelers just haven't figured out that the market has changed, in my opinion. Thank you, Claude, for your $2 super chat.
What's up, man? Yeah, it's good to see you. It's good to see everybody in the chat.
Yes, 100%. Good to see you guys. I think it's a little steep. I'm hoping he decides to go for the Steelers, because its options are Pittsburgh and New York.
That's
and
that's it.
Like, I don't really see how that's an option unless the offer is just so much lower. I mean, unless the Steelers are offering him $15 million a year also.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to at least match where he was at 33, to end up pulling him in.
Yeah.
Where are you comfortable, or where do you think the Steelers are comfortable paying in Aaron Rodgers?
Probably around that 30 mark.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. I think 90 is super high for a quarterback that wasn't efficient all year, and for somebody who's 41 years old. Unfortunately, I know Aaron's probably trying to get one last payday. But if Aaron really wants to try to make something out of his last 1 to 2 years in this league, like, he's made a lot of money, and you need to, and I think this is a reason too why the Steelers have been a little quiet the first 2 days of free agency, because they're trying to figure out what's going on here at quarterback before they start moving all their money around. But he needs, when you would at least think somebody in that position who's only won one Super Bowl and had a rough 2 years with the Jets should honestly, at the end of the day, not really be gung-ho on how much you're making, rather than how can we make this team a top-end contender in the AFC? What can we use this money toward for who else is out there right now to try and bring this team even higher? Not saying that will happen, but it's definitely seems like it's a hold up more financially, more so. If I had to guess, I'd imagine Aaron would rather come here than the Giants. I mean, he's already played in New York. The Giants are still trying to figure out what direction they want to go. for their future. The Steelers have a handful of talent right now that I know that they want to win with right now. So maybe that's why they've wanted to go with Aaron when they've kind of looked at this upcoming quarterback class and looking at their roster like, okay, we're not really going to accomplish what we want with a rookie quarterback this year. We're probably not going to accomplish that with Justin Fields. We're not going to accomplish that with Russell Wilson because we saw how last year ended. Aaron being 41, him and Tomlin have kind of had some type of connection, and they're probably looking at Aaron, probably the way he finished the season last year and what he's kind of accomplished in his career. And Aaron's somebody where he's going to get rid of the ball very fast. He's never been he's thrown more interceptions last year than really he did in almost any season of his career. He's never been a turnover guy. He still has an arm, I think, like Russell Wilson does. He did play better at the end of last year, but he gets the ball out very quick. And maybe that's another reason why too, is that Russell Wilson takes a lot of sacks. He tries to create the play, but he doesn't have the mobility the way he used to, and that's the problem. With Aaron, sure, Aaron doesn't have mobility, but Aaron has always been a guy who's very quick to get rid of the football, number one. Number two, Aaron has always been a middle of the field passer. Number three, Aaron's very quick to get rid of the football. He's so that might be something that's enticing for the Steelers rather than Russell Wilson, who's going to give you the deep shot, who's going to try extend a play, get sack, or throw a check down pass. So if you want to factor those type of notes or bullet points into it, okay, maybe that's the Steelers' mindset on it. But also at the end of the day, you need to be able to move in today's NFL. You need to have mobility in today's NFL. And Aaron is 41 years old. So, and I don't trust his agility. What happens if Aaron gets hurt? He was healthy last year, but still, he's 41. Right. That's my concern. Then you're just going to waste another season.
Well, I think that's a clue there too on its own. Like when it comes to who the Steelers might choose, Art Rooney did mention they want to bring in quarterbacks of the similar type. That way, game plan and philosophy doesn't have to change. Right? If you have a mobile quarterback starting and an immobile quarterback backing him up, that's two different game plans, two different styles, et cetera, et cetera. And we found out today through DK Pittsburgh Sports that the Pittsburgh Steelers organization have reached out to Mason Rudolph and his people, not just to Mason, but also his people, about a likely return to Pittsburgh. He's not going to be backing up somebody who's going to be running the ball a lot. Mason, that is. So all indications probably are that they are going to be leaning more towards Rodgers. One thing that really wants me to say, or really is pointing me in the direction of Rodgers, and I think I've been leaning this direction for at least a couple of weeks now. I'll be honest with you. I put it out in a couple of videos. I talked about it in 2 videos ago. I think it was Sam Darnold was in the conversation. But if you guys go back to maybe about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago on Still Current Network on the website, stillcurrentnetwork.com, there's the audio podcast where you'll see mine, State of the Steelers. They come out on Saturdays. It's audio only, doesn't come out on YouTube. It comes out on everywhere else you find your podcast. Well, I said there, I was like, there's one thing that's attractive about one quarterback that's out there that's going to be available, and that's Aaron Rodgers, is the fact that for the last, I don't know how many years, and with I don't know how many quarterbacks and offensive coordinators, we have heard that the quarterback is handcuffed as far as they cannot trust what they see. They're not allowed to change the play. They're not allowed to, dissect the defense and put his teammates in position, and are forced to run whatever it is the offensive coordinator is running. We've heard that every year, including with Russell Wilson. According to him and his people, that's what happened in the Cincinnati game. The initial one, he was changing plays. He was doing things on his own, and Arthur Smith didn't like it. There was some head buttage, and it resulted, though, in a 400-plus yard performance from Russell Wilson.
Why is this a common theme with their offensive play callers, dude?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I just don't understand. It makes me want to just rip my hair out.
Exactly. And so for me, I think that Aaron Rodgers would be a guy that you couldn't probably do that with. He's going to say, no, I'm going to trust what I see. He's kept himself relatively healthy. I mean, he's had a couple of years where he had a collarbone or the Achilles tendon here recently. I know Afton says, how's he going to keep himself healthy? He does have the ability to get rid of the ball fairly quickly. But I do think that this offensive line it should be better. Broderick Jones on his natural side, on the left
Thank
side,
God.
I think that's going to be a huge
About
plus.
freaking time.
Yeah, Frazier is going to be another step up. I think Sayumalu is going to be a lot healthier in the middle. On the right side, you have Fautonu that's going to be coming in. We only saw one game, but according to what we heard, in the offseason, he was the most polished offensive lineman, including Zach Frazier. And we saw what Zach Frazier was able to do. So if he's able to be somewhat a Zach Frazier on the outside, I think the Steelers are going to be okay on the right side of the line. McCormick is going to be the biggest question mark, in my opinion. The Steelers have enough faith in him, but that's why you got the two guys on the outside, right? You got GP and you have DK. Those guys are going to make defenses have to respect that. And we're going to see some coverages for that, which is also going to make it favorable for the running back. Whoever that may be, I'm knocking on wood that it might be Gentry. Hopefully the Steelers make that happen out of Boise State.
Let's talk about that for a quick minute. That's interesting. So if Ashton Genty falls down the board, you would be completely okay with them taking a running back round 1.
Yes, sir. If it's him, yeah.
Genty, listen. And let me say it. No matter what the Steelers do, this goes for any fan base. No matter what they do, you're either going to have people be okay with it or you're going to have people that criticize it. It doesn't matter. The Steelers could get Patrick Mahomes and you have somebody complaining about how much money he makes and he has a 10-year contract.
That's true.
So it doesn't matter. Ashton Genty's a beast. All you got to do is go back and watch what he did at Boise State. He and Najee Harris are not in the same realm in terms of what they did in college. I'm sorry. So I could completely be on board with that because if he falls to 21, he's the best player on the board. And there's nothing wrong with going best player available. When they took Najee Harris, we could say maybe at the time, not looking at it right now, but at the time, they were really just desperate for a running back at that time. And Najee was the best one available and was probably likely to go first round at some point. But they're two different prospects. And that's something that people who are anti-running back round 1 need to understand. Not every running back that goes round 1 is an anti-round 1 back. There's multiple running backs over the years that went round 1 and are game changers at the end of the day. So if he's there and the Steelers really value him, that's something that I think could definitely be of consideration and would make sense. But he's the only one, in my opinion, that should be round 1.
Yeah, I agree. I'd go running back round 1 with him, and then I wouldn't touch it till the 3rd round. If I go running back and maybe 4th round at that point, based on position and need at this point, because the Steelers are going to still have to draft a quarterback, and that's not going to be round 1. No. That's going to be round 3. That's going to be round 4, especially if the Steelers go and get a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Now, they could just go with Aaron and Mason Rudolph. Like I said, DK broke that earlier. Bring in Mason Rudolph back. Steelers reached out to him. And then all you got to do is just pick up an undrafted free agent, quarterback for rookie minicamp, and then next year worry about it, which is where I'm kind of hoping they go. I'm really hoping that they somehow find their way to be able to trade. And I think one of the trade up and get in position. Year? Yeah, and get a quarterback in next year's draft. I think it's going to be a lot.
I'm going.
There you go.
I'll be going. Me and Z will be going.
There you go. I may end up going too. I was talking with the wife about it.
It's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yep. And one day too, be a blast.
You know it. And so I'm hoping they end up targeting a quarterback in next year's draft. I think it's going to be a better one. And I think there's a little bit of a hint of what the Steelers are doing as far as next year's draft to position themselves to get a guy, and that is in the compensation realm. The Steelers have only signed one person in free agency up to this point that's going to affect the compensation formula, and that was the inside linebacker out of from most recently from the Ravens. With his $10 million deal. As of now, I think the Steelers are going to get, because of Dan Moore out of all people, Justin Fields and some other players. I think it's going to be, as of now, it's like 2/3, a 4th, and a 6th, and something like that as far as comp picks go for next year's draft. That would be That would be huge. So that way the Steelers can position themselves into getting one of these quarterbacks. Even if they were to get Aaron Rodgers, let's just say they sign Aaron, he's not a free agent. He's getting cut from the Jets, and so he wouldn't affect the comp formula pick, or for the comp formula for that pick. No. Mason Rudolph would, but not to the extent that it would take away one of the third rounds or the fourth rounds, based on the fact that he's most likely going to be a backup and the paycheck isn't going to be as high. And so I think that's might be like pretty much a good hint as to where they want to go. I just don't know why they haven't, put pen to paper yet and get this thing going.
It's got to be a money thing, man. That's the only thing I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be.
Yeah, and I get it. The only thing about it is, like, how much money do you need? I mean, never enough, I guess, right? But I think there's somebody had put out there that just in NFL money, Aaron Rodgers has made over $400 million in his career.
Yeah.
He's been in the league a long time, so makes sense. Mm-hmm. But he's got everything he needs. Finish his career with a storied franchise, and being able to put it,
it could be a Brett Favre 2.0.
Yeah. Or
the way he was with the Vikings.
Yeah. Or Kurt Warner, maybe.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah,
I'm not going to rule that out. Like, Afton, you're planning on going to the draft too? That'd be cool. Heck yeah. It's probably only going to get one time to do it. So if you have the capability, do it. As much as I want to buy in to the idea of Aaron coming in for 1 to 2 seasons and having a renaissance in his career, it's something where you just kind of have to see it to believe it. And I have the same feeling if they go the Aaron route. I just still have the same feeling it's going to be around the same way I feel about Russell Wilson. I just don't think that it moves the Steelers in any type of upward trajectory. I don't. I think they stay around kind of the same ballpark they've been in. There'll be some good, there'll be some bad. But I think Aaron does carry some better qualities than Russell Wilson does, both at this point in their career, as we talked about it. So I don't think either guy was anybody's really preferred idea going into this offseason. But based off of those are really your two options, and they're not going to take one in the first round this year. It really just kind of come down to which one that you ultimately prefer. And I think regardless of either option, I think it just kind of keeps them around where they're at and where they've been at. So I want to believe I want to talk myself, and maybe as the season comes around, you get more excited. But if Aaron realistically does come here, I know 100% they're going to just try to surround him with as much as possible. And you have Metcalf, Pickens, maybe they do bring in a Cooper Kupp and you roll with those 3 guys, if that's your 3-headed monster. Cooper Kupp can work the middle of the field, right? Aaron's a middle of the field thrower, great on crossing routes, quick to get rid of the football. You have some guys that are reliable where he can do something like that. It can be, if you're going to look at it, Mark, you'll still be watching, bro. You'll still be up at 2 a.m. watching, bro. No matter who's quarterback. I know you will. I know you will, bud. Sure. The mindset of Aaron throwing the ball around to some of these guys can be a fun little idea, but we still have to be realistic just in the sense of where he's at. And the people that would have concerns and questions, it's all fair. It's all fair. 41, lack of agility, possibly injury prone, especially still with that Achilles injury. I think he did get better as the season went on. But also just what's the locker room going to be like? What's the whole thing going to be with Metcalf and Pickens and Aaron, right? And we saw the problems with Aaron and Mike Williams last year with the Jets. We know the problems Aaron's had as a teammate to some people, not all people, but some guys he's rubbed the wrong way. But also this is a different organization than the Jets, and Aaron's not going to be bringing his buddies around and everything, and he's going to have to go by different ways. He's not going to be dictating the organization like he did in New York. So there's also going to be some different factors. It all just comes down to wait and see. But I understand that you're going to have people that are going to say they want one or the other. Obviously, neither is my preferred choice, but if that's the direction they decide to go, it's the direction they decide to go. If the season, regardless how the season ends, they need to invest in a quarterback next year. 100%.
I agree.
Now, what if, here's a scenario, what if they go the route of Jackson Dart and they sit him behind Aaron Rodgers?
Man, I wouldn't be opposed to whoever they pick, in the draft and sit behind Aaron Rodgers. I think that may have been an option. The fact that the Steelers contacted Mason Rudolph tells me they're probably not impressed with the quarterbacks that are in the draft this year. I don't blame them, but there is one more name that has been recently thrown in the rumor mill, and that is Kyler Murray out of from Arizona. He apparently is potentially going to be traded, and there's been a lot of rumor. From a lot of different places, and
I know people will throw some pictures out there, but I haven't seen anything in terms of like media or anything really kind of talking about that. They just signed Brissett as a backup.
Right. I know that one of them was like Yahoo Sports News, and there was a bunch of other ones that have populated, because my father told me that, and I was like, where'd you hear that too? Looked it up, kind of just put it out there, and sure enough, even on Twitter, there's a few blue check marks out there reporting that Kyler Murray may be a guy that the Steelers might be targeting.
Do you think maybe that's a reason why there's a little bit of a wait? They're calling phone lines?
I hope not, man. I hope not. I'm not really impressed with Murray. I mean, he's little.
I'm not either. I know that I am more in tune probably with the Cardinals than most people in terms of the Pittsburgh realm.
Yeah.
Because I did live there for a period of time. And my buddy Z as well. Same thing. I'm not a huge Kyler fan, just in the sense of his size and just in the sense of I don't think he's a great leader, and I don't think that he's really going to accumulate to being an elite quarterback. But he's not awful. Like to me, he's just kind of middle of the pack type guy. But I think that maybe if he'd be in a scenario with the Steelers, who ultimately still are a better team than the Cardinals and a better organization, it might help him. I mean, he's still young. He was drafted in 2019. He's mobile. He can move. He does throw a pretty ball, but he is small.
Yeah.
And that's his main thing, is that he has some things to his game that are outside of his control, and that's a problem. And that's probably more of a reason why he hasn't really formed more into that first overall pick. He's not a bust at all. He's done. I mean, you can look back at some years with the Cardinals. He that one good year that they had with D-Hop and they lost in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, the end of the year was a disaster for them, but he did some really good things for them there. And then he got injured and missed most of the season the following year. And then last year he was a big part of them being 7-4, but then again, they had a collapse toward the end of the season. He'd be an interesting name. And to be honest with you, I'd probably rather have him than anybody out there. But if you would do that, the Steelers would have to be convinced that he's going to be their guy moving forward.
I really hope not, man.
He's not. They're not just going to trade for him, and he's a 1 to 2 year rental. I mean, the guy has a big contract.
Yeah, some would say that him and George Pickens would get along very well playing the video games. I would say that the Steelers are too cheap to put video games in the locker room. And
Brian. I mean, he's really just kind of around average, honestly. So, it probably would be a good amount of draft capital that'd have to be given up for him, especially with his big contract. It'd be something of just, if you trade for him, he's got to be your guy you commit to. Not a 1-2 year tryout.
Exactly. And that's the reason why I'm really, really hoping that's not the route that they go. I don't want the Steelers to get smaller at QB. That's one of my biggest issues with Russell Wilson, is just the fact that he's too small to see over the middle of the field.
Yeah.
the middle of the field, regardless of who it's been, Russ or Justin, Mason, even Ben in his last few years, was like kryptonite to the Steelers offense. They just stayed away from it.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of like leaning towards maybe an Aaron Rodgers, because he'll throw it over the middle of the field. And
he will. Yeah.
he doesn't throw a lot of picks.
No, he doesn't. He threw 11 last year, and he had some bad plays. But like I said, as the season went on, their season was pretty much over. But close to a little bit after the second half of the season, I mean, he played pretty well. He did.
I would assume that he'd be getting a little bit better throughout the year as far as, the Achilles.
Yeah, and coming off that. So
yeah, I mean, some people say that that's an 18-month
yeah.
type of thing, and so if that is the case, 18 months to get like really back to where you were, if you ever get there. I'll be honest with you, it's an injury that I don't think most do, but if you do, if you're able to handle the mental capacity, which I think he is. I mean, he's one of those guys that. A lot of people say he's narcissistic and a bunch of other things. So, I mean, I'm sure
Aaron's an odd guy. Let's just say that he is. He's different. He's odd, but I find him entertaining. I find him entertaining to listen to sometimes. I really do. He's definitely a different guy in the way that he does things, but that shouldn't determine if somebody wants him or not. As their quarterback, based off of how he lives his life. It should come down to honestly just really where you think he is.
No, I agree. But speaking of like, how do you think Russ feels right now? Like, he is the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
I mean, they offered everybody else a contract before him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, absolutely. Even Mason Rudolph got a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for sure they've been talking to him, and he probably has a feel. It seems like his market's pretty flat. Honestly, with Russell Wilson being 37, I mean, we saw. Wasn't there something that came out where there were people in the organization that really just thought his arm was done?
I don't think they necessarily thought his arm was done. They just thought his career was done. Yeah. I mean, when you can't fix that, the height thing. With Ben Roethlisberger, he had a problem holding onto the ball too. Yeah, but he could fix that. His problem was getting rid of it faster. So they hired a coordinator and Todd Haley that was going to help get him to get the ball out of his hand quick.
Yeah.
What coordinator are you going to hire so that Russell Wilson can see over the middle of the field?
Right.
I mean, there's nothing that you can do there.
Kyler Murray. And this is why when you watch Kyler Murray, is that when he snaps the ball, there's so many times that when he snaps it, he's already moving right away.
Yeah.
And it's because that the Cardinals have to play to where he is. And you can't do anything about that. You can't control that he's 5'9" or 5'8", however tall he is. Mm-hmm. So he's already moving right away, because he can't just sit back there and just scan the field with these 6'5" linemen in front of him. He has to move. And that's a problem. Now, let's hypothetically say Kyler Murray came here. Okay. I would have a certain level of excitement toward it, just because I do think that he would, again, if they would do that, they have to commit to the guy. But there would be some things I'd be excited about, but I also I'd be cautiously optimistic. Let me put it that way. I would be cautiously optimistic, just because some things he's done with the Cardinals has been impressive, has been good. He's helped lead some of these Cardinal teams at some points, but also there's things about his game that derails the Cardinals. That's the Cardinals back. And that's why I don't think he'll finish his career there. And that's why maybe it is possible that there's possibly a trade or something like that out there for him. I don't know if the Cardinals want to do that this year, just because of maybe where they saw themselves fit last year. I think they exceeded their expectations a little bit, but I would personally be more excited about that move than I would be with the current options. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. That's just how I feel about it. Now with Russell Wilson, there's a reason his market's flat, and I feel bad for Russ, because I think Russ is a good guy, and I loved watching Russ on the Seahawks. He was very fun to watch. He was one of my favorite players playing for Seattle. But at this point in his career, sometimes there's guys that can take their career a little bit longer, and sometimes you just can't. And I think that's just where he's at. And that's why I think if Russell Wilson would come back here, one of my main concerns is his longevity throughout the season. Can he last a full 17 games of being a starting quarterback before being pulled or before being benched? Because we saw that last year. He started 11 games. First, maybe 6 games or so, he was doing some really good things for offense that we haven't seen in quite a while. And then he couldn't finish out the last 5. That's my concern with Russell Wilson, is that if you're going to sign Russell Wilson to another 1-year contract, is that how much is Russell Wilson going to give you throughout the season? Because to me, if Russell Wilson's out, it's more so of him being benched than it is him getting injured.
Mm-hmm.
Rather with Aaron, I think Aaron is somebody that might be able to give you more than what Russell Wilson can, just given the fact of some different intangibles and qualities of his game that he brings at this point in both their careers. I'm not saying that I want Aaron or that he's my number one option, but when we're comparing the two, there's concern with both, but it's just kind of like pick your poison, honestly, at that point.
Right. Claude Bishop comes in with a $5 super chat saying Aaron has the most talent, but brings the most drama. I'm pretty sure if Aaron Rodgers ended up in the Pittsburgh Steelers, Hard Knocks is kicking themselves for not waiting one more year to get into the Steelers locker room with all those personalities. Cloud also continues to say, sign Mason and Winston for a year and get your quarterback in 2026. See, I'm not opposed to that.
Well, it's hard for me to see Winston because the guy's a turnover machine.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to see Winston. Mason,
Mike Tomlin hates that. And I just, like, it's funny because Winston has a heck of an arm. But, like, I've seen people throw that out there, like, oh, just roll with Jameis Winston for this season. And, like, what did Tomlin do with Justin Fields? He handcuffed the kid because what did Justin Fields do in Chicago? He turned the ball over so much. He only had three interceptions with the Steelers throughout his first 6 games. So Winston, I don't see happening, but Daniel makes a good point that if they're going to go the Aaron route, they're probably going to try to roll with a backup that they can kind of play similar to a little bit. I can see that rather than flipping the whole script and everything like that.
How would you feel if they just went Mason and then got a quarterback like a Tyler Shock in the draft?
I think I'd rather just go to bed at that point. I think I'd rather just go to bed because I have to sit through another season of hearing Mason deserves a chance. Like the guy's 29 years old. Like I don't think there's no more chance. I'm not saying that the guy, he was a professional, and I'm not saying that he didn't get a little bit of a shaft or anything like that. But like at this point, at that point, listen, if they're going to do that, I'd rather just see them trade TJ Watt and make Fitzpatrick. Because at that point, you're not going to win anything with that. Not that you're really going to win much with Wilson or probably even Aaron necessarily, really, unless, Aaron just kind of has a renaissance, kind of like if you've seen some other older quarterbacks. But if you're going to do that, I'd rather just see them stockpile for 2026 and move off some of their starters.
They're not doing that. And the reason why, they're trying to go all in. I mean, you don't offer a contract.
Thanks for coming around. We appreciate your insight. We've been seeing it.
Thank you. Man. The biggest thing is, like, for instance, Darius Slay, 1-year contract. I know there's some chatter whether or not he's changing his mind or not. The Steelers are serious enough to have offered him a contract and for him to sign it for 1 year. You don't do a 1-year contract with a guy like Darius Slay and not be going all in this 1 year. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I think if you were just kind of like, all right, let's just stockpile it up, you go with Corey Trice and a 6th-round draft pick or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. No. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. And that's why, like if they would bring Mason back, I don't mind. I think Mason's an okay backup. He is. You're not going to find like these great backup quarterbacks, right? Like they're backup quarterbacks. That's their role. So, some are better than others, but Mason, he did some okay things with the Titans, and there was some crap there too that he did with the Titans. But if they decide to do that, is what it is. He won't be the starter, but it could be a situation for him of kind of where he saw it with the Titans. If something happens wrong with Aaron or anything like that, he can get in there. It just, this is why it boils down to the Steelers botching this whole quarterback room for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And it makes me mad. I don't like being in the situation. There's teams in the situation that have been in the situation for a long time. So it's hard. It's hard to find elite quarterbacks. I kind of break it down in 4 tiers. You kind of have your elite, and then your next tier is like, good, above average, good. And then you kind of have, it's kind of mid, maybe a little below average. And then you just have the ones that are trash. It's hard to find those elite guys. You might have a little bit more luck finding those guys that are maybe that tier 2 that are solid or maybe above average. because I think there's a lot of average to above average quarterback play, but there's not much top tier. There's not much elite out there. And that's where the NFL is right now. So that's the thing, is that we can say all we want. Steelers got to find a quarterback and everything like that, but it's not the easiest thing in the world. But I don't like the way that they've kind of been playing quarterback roulette. I think that they've kind of botched a little bit with their processing the last 5 years, and is what it is. So hopefully next year, as Daniel agrees to, next year is most likely going to be the year where they could possibly do that, especially adding up composition picks, which is fine. If this season ends up kind of going down the drain, maybe we see a little bit of unloading for them to continue to.
We got capital. We got a little bit of breaking news.
What happened?
I think the Ashton Genty thing is going to be out the door. The Pittsburgh Steelers are finalizing a 1-year deal with former Eagles running back Kenneth Gainwell. Gainwell had a total of 1,906 total yards and 13 touchdowns in 4 years with Philly. Stays in the state of Pennsylvania. I think I was talking with Shannon White last night, and he mentioned Gainwell. He thought that maybe perhaps the Pittsburgh Steelers were interested in a guy like him. How do you think he's going to pair up with Connor? I mean, not Connor. I'm sorry, with Jaylen Warren. Same number, going back a couple of years.
I view Gainwell more as like a 3 type guy. I wouldn't view that signing, in my opinion, as something that would take Genty out of play. Gainwell's always kind of been a 2, probable 3. So I don't really take him as somebody that's going to get meaningful snaps for this team this year. I kind of maybe view more you're going to have Warren, depending what they do, if they would take a Genty, or maybe they take a running back in the 3rd or 4th round, because it's a deep running back class. You can find some quality. But Gainwell's good depth. I think that's, to me, the way I look at that, good depth signing is a guy that can be a fine 3. Cordarrelle Patterson, see you later. He can receive the ball. He's played for a little bit. He has some speed to him. I think that's something that he is a little bit more probable with Jaylen Warren. I don't think that would take anything off the table, though, for other running back plans. Just my opinion.
And the Steelers have been known to double dip free agency and in the draft. So getting a running back, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I was hoping you were going to be some quarterback news or something there, brother.
I was too. I saw the breaking news come across.
I was hoping, man. Darn it.
I was like, whoa.
I just want it resolved. We've been talking about quarterback since January. So I just want there to be some type of answer, resolvement, which it will come. The only other thing that I want to say about quarterback, Daniel, was even though Fields was more of my preferred choice, I was honestly open to Sam Darnold when those reports started coming out. The reason why is I know that there's context to Sam Darnold's season last year, but at the end of the day, Sam Darnold still did the work. He still did.
Dude,
and I can't. Yeah. I just want to explain real quick why I would be okay. Why I would have been okay with that move is that with Sam Darnold, he, between the Niners and with what he did with the Vikings last year, he has been able to have a strong taste of NFL offense in today's age. The problem, if he came out here, would be the Steelers don't have that type of coaching. And that's the context broken down. How much of it was the system and his supporting cast versus him? Now, Darnold still did the work, but when the Steelers made that move for DK Metcalf, it started making me think, like, are they going to veer away from Justin Fields because they want to move the football that type of way? And Sam Darnold was a guy that we saw, okay, he can move the football. He had Jordan Addison. He had Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson, when he came back from injury, was a viable option for them. So that was kind of why, okay, what those reports were coming out of Steelers are prepared to make an offer to Sam Darnold. And I would have been open to it just because of some of those reasons I mentioned. And I wasn't going to write Sam Darnold off just because of where he was coming from in the offense that was being ran, but I still would have been more cautiously optimistic. And again, I would have viewed it as a situation with Justin Fields. If Sam Darnold worked out, 27 years old, and that was more of a turning point of his career, then great. He can maybe turn into something. If Sam Darnold didn't work out, maybe there could have been a clause put in his contract if the Steelers were heavily interested and gave him a good deal, that maybe they could opt out after year 2 and they still could draft a quarterback next year. So in my opinion, I viewed there being multiple avenues with Sam Darnold. And that's why, just like with Justin Fields, I was open to the move because he's young. He can move a little bit. He can move the football. We know, I know the context that's involved in that. And that's why I'd have caution and some question. But with adding Metcalf in there, and then they're going to kind of revamp the running back room, it could have been interesting. It could have been interesting. And that's why that I was open to it. So that was my type of reasoning.
You know, for me, I just got flashbacks to Neil O'Donnell, number 14. You know, okay, could get you somewhere, but you know, in the biggest moment is going to let you down. And that's the flashbacks I got. You know, I looked at his record as a quarterback, and outside of last year, I mean, his performance has not been what you would expect. So, you know, was it the scheme? It could be. And I think he may have understood that, which is probably a reason why he chose Seattle over Pittsburgh. In fact, I think it was Chase Daniels that reported that he wanted to go to Seattle because I think the Seattle offensive coordinator there has some sort of ties to the same.
When he was with San Francisco, yeah.
Exactly, Kubiak. And so, you know, he wanted to go because of the scheme and also the paycheck.
Yep. That's what I mean. The Steelers don't have that level of offensive coaching.
Exactly.
And that's why if Darnold did come here, that would be everybody's ultimate concern.
Yeah.
That would be it. But honestly, I still would have rather have went that route given the options than where they're at right now. That's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Right.
Daniel, if they decide to go with Aaron, how does that make you feel in terms of your outlook on their direction for 2025?
I think I don't see any other quarterback being able to take them all the way. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers can. I'm just saying that if it happens, it's probably going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. I don't see any other quarterback that's got the what's the word I'm looking for? That's what it takes to do it. You know, I just you have some guys on the outside that are they're going to need a quarterback that's going to need that's demanding some respect out of them.
Yeah.
And you need an alpha there. And because of the alphas that you have on the outside, and if you don't have an alpha, those guys are going to take over. And, you know, the Russell Wilsons, Mason Rudolphs, they don't have that alpha. You know, at least from the perception from myself, it's
right.
They're not the alpha type. Aaron Rodgers is, Ben Roethlisberger is, you know, those type of quarterbacks who are going to get in the face of somebody and tell them to do their job, which, you know, there's clips out there. Ben Roethlisberger telling Antonio Brown to hush it up or this, that, or third, you know, when he's going off, you know, towards the end of his career there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so, you know, if you don't have that guy there that's going to be willing to get in the face of those guys and do what it takes and say, put them in their place, with this group, I don't think you're going to go very far. And so I would prefer Rodgers over the rest of the bunch, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I would think that it comes with a price, and there's another person that's thrown their head in the rings there. And that is, or the hat in the ring for Aaron Rodgers, and that is Father Time itself. He's just right now, some reports going on that it's between the Steelers, the Giants, and now retirement. And so now he is now beginning to consider just to retire. It's probably because he really doesn't probably want to stay with the Giants. The Steelers probably aren't paying him enough. And he's thinking to himself, what else does he have to accomplish at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. So if Aaron falls through, it looks like it will probably just end up being Russell Wilson again.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Given his market, I mean, I'm sure Wilson probably feels a little slighted, just the fact he was the starter and things were going well. I'm sure he understands too with the way the season ended, but he's a very more overly positive individual and probably thinks that he can get them farther than what he did last year. And I could maybe see where he might feel a little slighted, just the fact that he's kind of viewed more at the bottom of the totem pole for him. So if that's the case, then I mean, is what it is. That's why to me it made more sense to bring Fields back, or even if they wanted to offer Sam Darnold a deal. But it's just such a thin market, and teams that are extending their quarterbacks, like they'll give these huge contracts to their quarterbacks that really aren't even that great.
Yeah,
because they need one. They need one that if he's even if he's average or above average, like they're still going to freaking pay the guy. So honestly, my hope, which probably isn't happening, is that they are just making phone calls and calling around the league and seeing what
they got to sign somebody. Who's the person that you think that? Who's the guy? Who would you want to see there?
It's Aaron or Russ, honestly. I at that point, to be honest with you, I feel like I don't really even care who it really is. Like,
let's go Mason.
Yeah, like
that's funny.
I just don't think I really care, man, if it's Aaron or Russ at this point. Both don't really move the needle too much for me. I think it kind of keeps the Steelers around the same place where they were last year, and I'd rather just see the Steelers go in one direction and stick to it. If they don't like these quarterbacks and they're not comfortable with where their quarterback is, I'd rather just see them try and be honest with themselves and try to maybe aim for next year's draft, rather than try to lie to themselves and think that they can really make something out of it more than winning one playoff game at best. So right. Whoever it is, I'll be rooting for, hoping they do well. If it's Russ, I hope that he can prove people wrong, that he still has a little bit left and can do more for them than he did last year. If it's Aaron, I hope Aaron can have a renaissance. Truly, I do. But in reality, and with what we've seen and what we're given with both these guys, I don't really think it brings too much excitement for most fans, honestly. You know, we can talk ourselves into it and fantasize about it, and maybe some of those things will happen, maybe they don't. But that's kind of why I just kind of feel disappointed with the way that their quarterback situation's gone. I think that there could have been some other avenues that would have been better to go, for better or for worse, and at least it would have given them more resolution. With these two, I think you're just in the same place, honestly. And even if you are in the same place, let's say that they win 10 games again, and whether they win a playoff game or not, like they still can trade up in the 2026 draft and still draft somebody. So that's not out of the question. But again, it just kind of keeps them stale, man. That's the thing. It keeps them stale, and this quarterback situation's kept them from making some more moves in free agency to actually build out more of the roster, in my opinion. So I love the Metcalf trade. I think it was great. I think it helps set them up for whoever their future quarterback will be through the draft. I think it's important, if they're going to draft a quarterback next year, that this quarterback is set up with an offensive line, which it seems like could be possible with the young offensive line, and having Metcalf, or if they're going to keep Pickens around or different things like that, having somewhat of an offense set up. So I think those are some steps that were taken there, and that's great. But I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. I'll be rooting for who's ever behind center, and if it's Russ or Aaron, or even if it's somebody else, I don't know. Who knows? They could pull something out of their ass. Yeah,
they're going to have to. I put in a couple of polls in today. I want to get your opinions or just your answer real quick before we call it a show. Mm-hmm. The first one is, are you happy with what they've done so far? And it was actually a lot closer to it's 60-40, in the chat, as far as no, they're not, and 40% are yes, happy. Are you happy? What would you side with, as far as, are you happy with what
was the number? What was the percentage again?
It was 60% no, 40% yes.
Yeah, I'll go with the 60%.
I'm also in that 60% as well. That would have moved the needle probably closer to 70, because there was about 20 votes there. And then the last one, with about the same amount of votes, who would you rather have, Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson? Rodgers won this one with 63% to Wilson's 36%.
I think if I had to pick one between the two, I think I'd rather see Aaron. Just like I said, both of them are not the ideal direction I would have went this offseason. But given the fact if it's those two, I'd rather see Aaron, just given the fact he gets rid of the ball quickly. He throws over the middle of the field. He played better toward the end of the season. Maybe he can pull something out where he can have that Brett Favre, Kurt Warner renaissance to end his career for a year or two and hang it up. With Russell Wilson, the things that Daniel and I talked about, it's kind of frustrating to watch at a lot of times. So if I had to choose, that would probably be the direction I would go. But I don't know. I'm kind of deflated.
Brian says this may be an unpopular opinion, but he'd rather go with Mason over Russ for the money. I'm not against that. You know, I was actually pounding the table last year for the Steelers to keep Mason around and give him an opportunity and see what he has. And if it didn't work out, go in the draft to pick up somebody. I don't know how well he would have done. You know, he only had about 4 games with the Pittsburgh Steelers beforehand. And I will say that there is something about film, right? And when you look at what Russell Wilson was able to do this last season, the first few games, I mean, he looked excellent. Everybody thought he was old Russ. Yeah. And then as the more film came out and he became predictable as far as, you know, defenses were beginning to understand that he was either going to go for the moon ball on the outside or it was going to be a screen or a dump off. It was home run or short pass, nothing in the middle, nothing as far as in the middle depth wise either. And so, you know, that became predictable. And I think that hindered the offense as far as what they wanted to do as well. Who's to say that the same wouldn't have happened with Mason? But I think that he, you know, I would have rather seen what he would have done last year. But I'll be lying also if I didn't say that when the Steelers picked up Justin Fields, I didn't get excited. I thought he had an opportunity, but I'll be honest with you, I didn't see, outside of what he does with his legs. I saw a couple flashes here and there, but I wasn't really impressed with what he did with his arm with the ball.
Yeah, I think he was handcuffed a little bit, but I don't think Fields will ultimately turn into a prolific passer the way Lamar Jackson has.
You think the Jets have a winning record this year?
No.
Oh, interesting.
No, I don't. There's too much to fill in for them in one season, going through a whole new head coaching change and coaching staff changes, and they've signed some guys in free agency, but I don't think they have a winning season. No.
Yeah, neither do I.
It just doesn't happen like that, where you have a lot of turnaround, a lot of turnover, and a lot of different holes to fill in one offseason. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. I mean, the hammer hasn't dropped yet. The quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025 as of now is Skylar Thompson, because there's nobody else on the roster.
Heck yeah, man.
We'll see what happens. Do you have any final words? Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, you guys can find me at In Hindsight. I'm streaming this on my channel as well. So I haven't really been on too much the last month just because it's been a really quiet off season. But now since we're starting to move a little bit and we're starting to get some news out there, there'll definitely be content between my channel and Daniel and us coming on here, resuming our Unofficial Steelers podcast. So you guys can follow me there. I know probably most of you who come in the chat do. But it's good to be back on. Good to be back on and see all you guys in the chat and having some good conversation and giving your guys' opinions. We see it all as we're kind of conversing amongst ourselves and you guys. So it's always good to see everybody in here. Devin, as usual, coming in at the end of the show. So hope you're doing good, man. Hope you're doing good. But yeah, other than that, I think probably the next thing will be whenever we get some more clarity on what direction they're going to go under center. So,
you know,
we'll see when that happens.
You know, you can find me here. I'll be dropping some more content as soon as the quarterback position is filled. I'll be dropping a video about it, telling you about it, and then, you know, once we get closer to the draft, that'll be some more exciting stuff. So stay tuned. We'll be going live, as Nathan said, more often. You can find Nathan's channel in the description. It'll say follow, and then it has a little link. Just click that link, and it'll send you over this way. Joey Bosa to the Bills.
That just happened?
I assume so. Interesting.
Wow. I was thinking maybe the Niners.
Yeah.
Go back with his brother. I mean, the Niners are going – see, and this is the other thing that happens. The Niners, I mean, you want to talk about a team that's stripping themselves clean. You know why? They got to pay their quarterback.
Yeah, that's
Brock
true.
Purdy's due for a contract. Move off Deebo Samuel. They get rid of Dre Greenlaw. They let him go. They let Charvarius Ward go. They let Talana Hufanga go. They lose 2 of their starting offensive linemen. They get rid of Javon Hargrave. So they're cutting themselves clean right now, man. I'm not really quite sure what the direction is going to be for San Francisco, but that's what happens.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's what happens. That's what happens. But I would rather be in a position to pay my quarterback rather than be in this position right now. But that's the Steelers' fault.
That sure is. And that's the good teams get the rich get richer.
Yep. It's just like the Eagles. Here. The Eagles have lost a lot.
Yeah, they sure
and
have.
They just that's usually how it goes. When a team wins Super Bowl, guys get bigger contracts. They can't pay everybody. They just traded Chauncey Gardner-Johnson today. So for some draft capital, they got to get off that. So that's the way it goes. So
that's the way the cookie crumbles. And that's what we're going to do here is crumble away until next time. We appreciate you guys. Please hit the like button.
God.
Please hit the subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.